Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, the 1st of May. Welcome back to the D3D4 football podcast dedicated to all things Leagues 1 and League 2. And welcome to a review of League 1's final day, which I don't know about anyone else, might have been a little bit of an anticlimax yesterday. I think it maybe became a bit clear towards the end, maybe even halfway through the game really, where things were going to go in terms of the playoff spots and the promotion and the relegation, but we'll review it anyhow. And the penultimate weekend of League 2, where there's still a lot on the line, certainly in terms of automatic promotion and playoffs. It's myself and two others today. I am joined by Chris Stringer. Chris, are we feeling pretty content at the moment?
Yeah, went over to Birkenhead yesterday for the match, and we had basically just made it a good day out. Still hurting a bit from last week, but things have settled down now.
Yeah, I've got a very depressed podcast group today because I'm also joined by David Jenkins. And David, it was not it was a difficult day yesterday, but I've got to say I do really appreciate you being here right now because I know that I would not be feeling in the best mood to this myself.
Yeah, tricky day yesterday. But yeah, we'll get onto it. But for sure, it's a mixed bag, let's say, of emotions this morning.
Yeah, do really appreciate you being here and giving us a chance to hear some of your thoughts about that game itself. A reminder, before we get going, that this podcast is in partnership with The Big Step, which tackles football's relationship with gambling. There is an excessive presence of gambling adverts within football, and The Big Step continues to do great work to raise awareness about the dangers of gambling and the impact that it can have on so many people's lives. So, let's get going, and we'll begin with the world's best third tier.
League 1.
League 1, as I said, the final day, and as I mentioned before, I thought it was a bit of an anticlimax, to be honest. There was a lot on the line. We still had the title, we still had promotion, we had the playoff spots, we had 3 of the 4 relegation spots to decide, although it really felt like 2 were going to be decided anyway. And I think going into half time, you could kind of tell what was going to happen, really. We had one team getting blown away, as we'll mention. I think the only real question was, were Rotherham going to hang on to the 3 points that would get them an automatic spot with MK Dons doing so well down at Plymouth Argyle, really?
Yeah, that was basically it. Which is
a bit of a shame, wasn't it? I was hoping for some twists at the end of that, but I suppose from a perspective of those fans, it was just a relaxing day for them that they got the job done and didn't have any nervy moments, certainly.
It must be frustrating to be an MK Dons fan, seeing your team do everything they can on that last day to get into their second spot, and it's still not being enough.
Well, it's certainly a bit of a confidence booster ahead of the playoffs, I'll say, and we'll get onto that.
Well,
but we're going to begin with the league title winners, Chris. Wigan Athletic. They went to Shrewsbury Town knowing a win would get them the title. They duly got it. A 3-0 victory. A Josh Vale own goal in the first half. A Brayson Wilkeen in the second half. That puts him up to 26 league goals. He's won the Golden Boot. Had an incredible season as part of an incredible team. Wigan Athletic have won the League 1 title in 4 of the last 5 third-tier seasons.
I mean, that's just showing off now, isn't it?
It really is the competition. And the only exception, of course, was last year when they entered the season in such horrible circumstances, having been relegated through really out of nowhere financial trouble. And Liam Richardson assembled a squad that was able to survive, finish in 20th place. And that transition they made, Chris, from relegation battlers to title winners is superb.
Oh, it's fantastic. And I was actually on the train to Liverpool yesterday from Wigan, and there were a few fans on there, and they were confident going into the match. They knew what the result was going to be as far as they were concerned, and they put out a thoroughly professional performance, really sort of blew Shrewsbury away in the end, and they got the job done. And that's what they've done all season. They've just been thoroughly professional, exciting to watch, and I have no doubt that they'll be comfortable in the Championship next season.
Do you think it's almost gone a little bit under the radar, maybe, that it's not been talked about perhaps as much as some other League One sides, because it's come maybe a little bit later in the season that we hope? They've had this chance to secure promotion and a title for a few games now, and they had that defeat to Cambridge, they had that defeat to, was it Portsmouth, if I remember right, in midweek, where they were 2-0 up and threw the 2-0 lead away, and you were a bit worried about them in that case, but they came into the Shrewsbury game here and put in a really professional performance. And you've got to give credit to a lot of stars in the team. We mentioned Will Keane, who's ended up with the Golden Boot. Callum Lang's had an excellent season as well. You're really impressed with people like Tom Naylor and Max Power in midfield. James McLean is one of those players that I think all these top sides have that you look at and think you're a cut above the level, certainly. Been really impressed with Jack Watmouth as well, who moved from Portsmouth in the summer. It's a really impressive team from front to back, Chris.
Yeah, as I say, it's a really strong squad, and I don't think they need to make too many changes in the summer. Obviously, I imagine there'll be a few that leave to new pastures and whatever. But I'm looking at this squad, and I think it's largely ready to compete at a division higher.
David, I mentioned to Liam Richardson. I was talking with Gab Sutton last year, and we agreed we were going to knight him, Sir Liam Richardson, if he kept them up. He's won the league title now. What do we do now? What's the next upgrade? Is it lordship? I don't know what comes next after knighthood.
Well, knighthood's the top level, right?
I was going to say, yeah, it would have to be like
something above knighthood, doesn't it? We've got to do something now.
I think Victoria Cross for battling back, like, something like that. But no, as you say, to be fair, he's done what a job he's done there. Like, as you say, for them to be, 2 seasons ago, finding themselves, even last season, finding themselves in the position they were in, to get back-to-back, not only promotions, but in this case to win the title as well, it's just superb, isn't it? And it's fantastic to see a club that has come into that financial difficulty and turn around, because it gives, for me, it gives some of the other clubs that are struggling a bit some sort of hope that with renewed leadership could bring some renewed success. And Wigan have certainly proven that. And I think I echo both of your comments. I think Wigan have definitely deserved to be, up towards those places. And for the large part, they're definitely ready to compete at that high level with a very solid squad.
They've been magnificent. They've been relentless for a lot of the season. And with 92 points from 42 games, they are our league champions this year. And going up with them in second spot is Rotherham United, who needed to win at Gillingham to keep themselves above their nearest challenger, MK Dons. And they got that 2-0 win against Gillingham. Had the lead in the first half through a Michael Iekwe header. Sealed right towards the end with a goal from Georgie Kelly. And Georgie Kelly is a name that probably is not too familiar to been on League One this season, and part of the reason for that is it's his first appearance to Rotherham this season. He's been getting back up to thickness. He's a 25-year-old Donegal-born forward who spent his entire career in the Republic of Ireland with clubs like Derry City, Dundalk, had his last season last year at Bohemians and had a really productive season for them in the League of Ireland. And Rotherham brought him in late January 2022, and he's been getting up to speed. And that was his first goal for the club in his first appearance. Now, I can't lie. When I looked back at the highlights and I saw him arriving late on the ball to score, I did think, have Rotherham re-signed Connor Salmon? Because it did look like him to me, to be honest. But this is Georgie Kelly. They got him on, I believe, a 3.5-year deal as well. So I'm quite excited to see if we get to see a bit more of him in the Championship next year as well. Chris, Rotherham. This is said a lot, but I think we've got to say it again. Rotherham were relegated from the Championship in 16-17. They were then promoted from League One in 17-18, relegated from the Championship in 18-19, promoted from League One in 19-20, relegated from the Championship in 2021, and promoted from League One now in 21-22. Just give the fans a break. Seriously, just give them a quiet season, please.
I know Ian Bradder's a regular listener and contributor to the podcast and website. Was saying he quite wanted a boring season this year, so I'm sure he'll be absolutely disappointed to see them promoted. But yeah, I think if you Google the term yo-yo club, it just comes up with Rotherham's crest. But I mean, it's fantastic though. It must be so exciting to support a club like that.
Every second season's exciting, isn't it? You get the difficulty
coming from a fan that's never actually seen his club promoted. I'd love to have that.
It's certainly a yo-yo situation. I do wonder how they'll fare in the Championship next season, but they've got a lot of stars, David, you have to say. People like Dan Barlaser and Chidozie Ogbeni have been very impressive in midfield. Michael Smith's contributed double figures again up top. Impressive performances from Romario Edwards-Green, Michael Iekwe at the back, Jordi Osei-Tutu in the wing-back role. Johansson's been good in goal as well. I think there'll be people who will see Rotherham go up next year and just do the standard old, they're just going to go straight back down again. But is there a chance you think they could be competitive in the Championship next year?
Do you know what? I'd like to hope so. Because I think the case could be said for the majority of this top 6 that we've found ourselves with. To be honest with you, I think any of this top 6 could probably compete with, probably a couple more players, and to get them up to that standard. But, if you look at the golfing quality between the top and the bottom this year, it is just enormous. So for me, if there was ever a time for you to, as a club, to be able to slot into the division above and have a very solid chance of staying there, it's probably this year, given the quality and the competitiveness that we've had at the top this year.
Yeah, I would always say as well, speaking to a few people in the past, I think as a club promoted from League One, your first objective in the Championship, no matter who you are, is survival. That's just the way it is at the minute. The Championship is a difficult league. It's not a very strong financial league either. A lot of clubs record losses because they're trying to make that transition from being a Championship side to pursuing the Premier League and the money that's needed to get into that division. And in the case of clubs like Derby County, as we've seen, it can backfire if you don't achieve it. So I would always say
Rotherham does really well, actually.
Yeah, Rotherham are very well run, certainly.
I remember a good few years back now when Oldham were in League One. A board member at the time, who Oldham fans listening will know exactly who this was, said Oldham couldn't afford to be promoted to the Championship, and Rotherham absolutely exemplify how you can be a financially sustainable club and play in the Championship. You don't have to blow your entire budget on pursuing the Premier League. You can just enjoy being in the second division.
Yeah, absolutely. We're delighted to Rotherham United fans and look forward to seeing them in the Championship next year. The game was a very contrast, though, we have to say, because whilst Rotherham were celebrating in that open away end about winning promotion, Gillingham, David, needed to better Fleetwood's outcome, really didn't on this situation. Both clubs lost, which means Gillingham have been relegated to League Two on goal difference. My condolences. You know, as I've said before, this is relegation. It's not a fun thing to talk about. However, it is a really important part of football. You can't really put anything on Neil Harris, can you? The fight that's been shown since he's come in. This is an issue that stems back a lot further before his appointment.
Yeah, it's certainly not Harris's fault. He's come in, he's done what he can do. I tell you what though, lads, I did see an interesting stat that if the league had started when Harris came in, and ended at this point, then it would be your boys, Ed, but an Albion that would be relegated and Gillingham would be in 15th place. So if only that was the league table instead, for my sake, but maybe not for the pod's sake.
We'd have got in the playoffs last year if we'd started halfway through the season, David, so we can't always say things like that. Sorry, it's just the way it is.
What's that phrase that Gino had on that cooking show? It was, if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bike.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Something like that, yeah. Yeah, I noticed the comments from Neil Harris post-game weren't very encouraging. Apparently you have 7 players under contract who all aren't going to be here next season.
Well, I don't think he necessarily said that. Yeah, no, actually he did. Yeah, like there's going to be a considerable amount of play. To be fair, we knew going into the season that there was going to be a lot of players that were out of contract anyway. And right at the start of the season, there was rumoured to be no players in contract.
You EFL loan, didn't you, which limits you to signing players on 1-year deals, doesn't it?
Yes. So so anyone that was signed this season would be automatically going anyway. Yeah. So I suppose, to be fair, there's a lot of fans I've seen that have done like who they would keep and who they would let go. And to be quite honest, I don't think the squad in general is up to par. I think there could be some players that would be useful players in League Two. But quite frankly, I think we've got some academy prospects that sit on the bench that could probably be useful squad players. And that's the story for another day, really. But it's been a tough season, and I think when you have a Steve Evans team, as we had at the beginning of the season, which obviously Harris is working with, we all know that Evans is one of those managers who takes those risks. With the budget we have in League One as well, it's not a massive amount, so you kind of have to try and get where you can and gamble, especially when you're under an embargo that, isn't an embargo for some reason. And
that EFL, the conditions of that EFL loan are actually really horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it ends this season, so it ends at the end of this season. So going into League Two next year, we won't be under an embargo, which is really positive as well. But, to be honest with you, lads, the only positive I take from this, and actually, there's 2 positive points, which, in itself is rare for me to have anything positive to say. But the fact that Gillingham, firstly, we even had a chance coming into the final day is massive for me, because we were 10 points adrift when Harris has come in, and we found ourselves in a position now where we had a chance. Sure, it's against second place in the league at the time, but there is no one that could say that those players didn't battle. Like, Rotherham was just too good for us. Way too good for us, and they fully deserve their promotion. But Gillingham's squad just, we were not good enough. We've conceded too many goals. We've only scored 13 goals at home all season, which is absolutely woeful. Like, it's such a disappointment, and it goes from early season up until now. It's not just this isn't just a last since January type thing. This has been coming for most of the season. I think just sort of almost the hope has killed us with Harris coming in. But the second positive would be Neil Harris himself. He's already said that he's going to stay on next season, and I really think that he's got the potential to build something really good here. And with bringing Nicky Shorey in, hopefully we can, there'll be no excuses next year, really. It'll be entirely his squad, entirely his decision. So hopefully we'll make some sort of, I'd hope a promotion charge, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? There's a lot that can happen in both of these leagues, but I look forward with some trepidation to next year.
Indeed. Gillingham having their relegation confirmed. Not an easy thing to talk about, as I say, but an important part. The result of the day, boys, I would have to say was at Home Park, where we had a very important fixture between Plymouth Argyle and Milton Keynes Dons. One looking to secure a player spot, the other looking to potentially secure automatic promotion. Argyle went into this game 7 unbeaten at Home Park. They'd had clean sheets in all 7 of those games. And MK Dons destroyed them. And particularly Scott Twine destroyed them, is the best way to say it. It was incredible. 4 goals from him, the other from Harry Darling in between those 4 goals. You can't use the term world class to describe an EFL player, because it's just not right. It's not the top level of the game. But I'll tell you what, watching Scott Twine sometimes, Chris, it makes me want to call it world class, because it's absolutely ridiculous what he's done this year. 33 goal involvements in 45 league appearances, and he's 22. This is scary stuff.
It was just a sublime performance. I mean, that free kick he scored as the opener, I think, sums him up. He's just such a entertaining technical player, and he deserves to play at a division higher at least.
I'm starting to think he could skip the Championship, to be honest, and just go straight to the Premier League, because it's interesting to see. He's just been phenomenal this year.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. He's shown exactly what he's all about, and if I was a Premier League club looking at a 22-year-old footballer performing like this at the top end of League One, I would certainly be making some inquiries.
I absolutely would be making some inquiries. I'm really curious to see where he's going to end up now. But MK Dons have got a playoff spot, because despite that big win, Rotherham's win means that they missed out by just a point. Not a failure of a season at all for MK Dons. Still at least 2 games left to go. They're going to play another side in the playoffs. We'll get onto who they're playing in a moment. David, Plymouth Argyle. This is a painful end to it all. They've had it's been, look. I think we'll look back on this at the whole of the season and say it's been a successful one. I don't want to talk about our predictions at the start of the season in terms of where we've had Plymouth Argyle. We still blame James for that. We've agreed on that. And we will continue to blame James on that, because he was the one most insistent about it. But even still, Argyle over the season have made us look very silly, whether that's on Ryan Lowe, and even when transitioning to Steven Schumacher as well, they still continue to look excellent. Been very impressive at home across the whole campaign. The tough run-in at the end was always something we made a note of, and we hoped it was going to be enough of them, but to go out like this it leaves a sour taste in the mouth, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think in some respects this might feel just as rough as relegation, especially when they've sort of been in that sort of talking. Yeah, they've been in and around those places for a lot of the season. And then they've done really, really well. I just think their recent run of form has sort of knocked them off. But if I was a Plymouth fan, I would be very optimistic. Granted, I would feel very sad at this point that, you find yourselves outside of the relegation zone, especially when it comes down to the final day.
No, they're not outside the relegation zone, mate. Don't worry about that.
Well, they are.
I think you need playoff spots.
Well, that's what I meant. I've
Yeah.
got other stuff on my mind. But yeah, I think in general, I think if Plymouth fans look at this objectively, this is a really, really good season for them. An even better season, of course, would have been to land in those playoff places. But I think that this puts them in a really good stead for next year. And to have Schumacher leading them forward and to be able to continue the development of the team that they've got there, providing they keep some of those players who I think some of those lads could definitely play at a higher level. But, you know, I could only heap positivity onto this Argyle team and hopefully they push on next year for another playoff kind of place and potentially automatics depending on summer recruitment.
We'll have to see. A disappointing way for the season to really peter out for them. It's a fantastic form heading into their final 5 games of the season. A goalless draw at Burton Albion, a 2-0 loss at Wycombe Wanderers, a goalless draw with Sunderland, a 1-1 draw away at Wigan, and then that defeat to Keynes Dons on the final day means that they missed out on a playoff spot, which is disappointment. But I completely agree with you, David. Over this whole season, you've got to feel encouraged by the way Plymouth Argyle certainly could go in the future, and we'll see what happens with them next year. Chris, 4th place in the league has been confirmed by Sheffield Wednesday. They had what looked potentially a bit of a tricky test against Portsmouth. They actually fell behind in this game to a goal from George Hurst, who's been in excellent form for Portsmouth in the back half of the season. But Sheffield Wednesday just then went and blew them away. Another goal for Lee Gregory, a goal for Berahino, Jordan Story, yes, and George Byers scoring as well. Sheffield Wednesday, there's so much quality in this team. We've been waiting to see it throughout the whole season, and now in the back end of this, they're going to feel a lot confident heading into these playoffs, you have to say.
Oh yeah, I mean they're going into it with a really, really good bit of form. Just looking, you know, they've had a loss a couple of weeks ago against Wycombe, but other than that, they've had
defeat in their last 11 games. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really impressive. And they were tested yesterday for sure by Portsmouth. There will have been a few, you know, I don't know what the phrase is, a few nerves around the stadium when Hurst gave Portsmouth the lead. But they finished it off superbly and a great comeback in front of 33 and a bit thousand fans in League One. I know these clubs are really big clubs, but I still think that's fantastic, and they were treated to a really good performance.
I think I mentioned this before. I love the contrast I actually really like the contrast in stadium sizes in this league. How 1 minute you can be up in the top tier of the Sunderland Stadium away at the Stadium of Light, and the next minute be out on an uncovered terrace at Gillingham or Accrington. I actually really like that contrast. I think it's really good, and you don't really get that equivalent of that with any other division in the Football League.
I made the mistake of looking at some National League stadiums the other day.
Oh, you're going to enjoy it. I actually think it'd be nice to do some. You might disagree, but we'll see with that, yeah. Playoff spot secured to Sheffield Wednesday, as we say, with a really impressive win over Portsmouth. And there's also a playoff spot, David, for Sunderland, who went to Morecambe, knowing a win would probably be enough to secure that spot. They got it. Another goal for Nathan Broadhead. But the news that he was brought off before half-time and appears to be maybe a little bit doubtful at the moment to play in the playoffs. Not the best news for Sunderland, you have to say.
No, not at all. I suppose there is there's some hope in the sense that, you know, Sunderland have still got a lot of quality, and I think none of these teams are in the playoffs for no reason. Sunderland still have, of course, they still have Ross Stewart, and they still have a lot of quality going forward. So I wouldn't necessarily count them out just on the basis of Nathan Broadhead, but you can't shy away from what he's brought to this team this year, and his performances across the season. But I certainly think that they'll be okay, because I think they've still got, you know, Ross Stewart has still had a phenomenal season. And the quality that any of these teams have is top tier.
Yeah, I do hope we see Broadhead play, because I've been really enjoying how sharp he's looked in recent games, and the potential of having him and Ross Stewart going into these playoffs is going to give Sunderland a lot of hope. They will play Sheffield Wednesday, of course, as you've seen, with it being 4th v 5th, and that is a mouth-watering tie. I don't know about you two, but that feels very, very exciting.
I think they summed it up on Quest, just talking about the number of fans that are going to be watching those fixtures.
Oh yeah,
in person.
That's a very good one. It's not it shouldn't be a League One fixture, really. Let's be real. How that's a 3rd tier fixture is still quite mind blowing to me.
they're going to be some of the biggest attendances across Europe in the third division of football.
It's the world's best third tier for a reason. Chris, one thing to mention as well with this, despite losing the game, the results elsewhere mean Morecambe have survived. And it's a magnificent achievement. They were written off by a lot of people at the beginning of the season, coming up through the League Two playoffs. Naturally, is what you consider to be the weakest side. Had a lot of work to do. Lost Derek Adams in the summer, who went on to Bradford. He's come back since that international break where they've returned, and in April they've had a fantastic month which has got them out of this trouble. Cole Stockton contributing with a ton of goals. I still believe his absence from the League One team of the season was a bit of an injustice, really, because he was fully deserving of that. Morecambe have still never been relegated as a football club. Incredible.
It's good going, that, isn't it? It's
Incredible.
Really good going.
And you've got to think as well, this was a team that in League Two for years and years and years was written off as relegation fodder. It was always expected to be down the bottom.
Every single season.
And then Adams comes in, they make that brilliant transition into a playoff side, they win the playoffs, they go up to League One, and naturally everyone expects them to finish bottom or around the bottom four again. Magnificent for Morecambe, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up well, and that's what I was going to say. In League Two, they were always tipped to be relegation fodder, and they were tipped again in League One, and they just keep defying the odds. But a few years ago when Accrington got promoted to League One, we thought they'd struggle, and this season they finished 12th. Then why not with Morecambe? They're a very well-run club. They've got a good manager in Derek Adams. Why not? It's really nice to see it, and I've said before, I have a soft spot for Morecambe due to me taking them to the Champions League on Football Manager.
It's good fun with the Shrimps. I remember them, I think it was last year, they put out a statement saying that the club's ambition was to be a solid League One outfit within the next 2 years, and got to say they're on track to do that. Fantastic, and we'll see how much they can grow and develop under Derek Adams next year.
Isn't it nice to see a realistic plan as well?
Is this a dig at Oldham?
Well, no, but it's a dig at it's a dig at football plans. Morecambe have just put out a nice, modest aim that's realistic, achievable, and they're on track to do it. And that's just really nice and refreshing to see, because you see football owners, including Oldham, but that it wasn't particularly a dig at that.
Okay.
Always putting out these goals of making a club Championship or Premier League within the next 5 years, and it's always bollocks. And Morecambe are just doing nice, sustainable goals.
Well, yeah, there's a very good sense of realism at Morecambe, you have to say. They're not going to get carried away with themselves and start talking about Championship football yet, because they know the size of the club and what they're competing with, and it's really impressive. They've done really well this season. Despite that defeat to Sunderland, they've secured survival. Fantastic. Sunderland have that playoff spot, as you mentioned, and the final team in the playoff spots are Wiccan Wanderers, who got a 2-1 win away at Burton Albion to enter these playoffs in some fantastic form. I was at this game. I felt Wickham were quite below the standards I probably expected them in this first half, really. I thought Burton were putting in a very good overall performance. Wickham had the lead, though, through Sam Vokes, and when you've got someone like Sam Vokes, you can hit from corners. It gives you an edge, especially when you've got Joe Jenkins providing the delivery as well to get them in front. An equaliser that Burton through Gassana had made the least I felt, to be honest, that Burton deserved, really, the chance to take a point. And ultimately, a point would have been enough for Wickham anyway, with the news of what was happening between Plymouth Argyle and Milton Keynes Dons. But Wickham do get the win right at the end through Jordan Abita. A horrific moment from Joe Powell, really. Just needs to clear his lines. He just holds onto the ball too long, and he acknowledges the mistake he's made there as well. A disappointment for Burton, really, to lose the end of that game, but a win for Wickham, who go into the playoffs. They will play MK Dons, boys. We're going to put a preview together for the League One playoffs after this, which will come out later in the week. This tie, they're both really good ties, but this is the one, MK Dons Wickham. I'm still undecided about where I think this is going to go.
See, if I'm honest, I'm the opposite way around. I
Really?
think I know the way. Yeah, I think I know the way this tie's going to go, and it's the Sheffield Wednesday Sunderland one that I'm really have a mixed idea of the way that one's going to play out.
I just think
I just want Wigan to win so we can have Everton v Wycombe.
I'm thinking that is a bit of my thinking as well, to be honest, with the way it's going with Everton. That was quite something to see, that fixture. Incredible.
Can you imagine a bunch of Everton fans going away to Wycombe?
I could actually, yeah.
That's just fantastic.
It's unthinkable to think that Everton could be in the Championship anyway, really.
I love this country's football.
Just incredible. Yes, Wycombe in the playoffs. They will play MK Dons. Sheffield Wednesday will play Sunderland. Pair of mouth-watering ties. Really, some really good football potentially about to be on show. And we'll have a playoff preview put together ready for you, which will be out later in the week. The other two relegation spots alongside Gillingham were, to be honest, always going to be concerned, really. Both Doncaster Rovers and AFC Wimbledon needed big wins to even have a chance. Doncaster got I think a fairly respectable point against Oxford United, you have to say. Initially behind to Billy Bowden, a great equaliser from Josh Martin, but they needed a double-figure win really to have a chance, and it was never really going to come. They have climbed up a place because AFC Wimbledon lost, but they're still relegated. Boys, Doncaster, I feel a bit unsure about what's going to happen with them next year. I'm not entirely sure if Gary McSheffrey is going to be the right person for this. We'll have to see. There's going to be a bit of backing as well. You've had the news that James Coppinger's come into a football operations role, a name within the club certainly, but a bit more of a case of maybe bringing in someone who's a name rather than actually knowing the role themselves. So maybe a bit uncertainty about Doncaster, David, going a bit forwards.
For sure. I spoke to some, like, when I found out this news, I retweeted it and about the Coppinger, and a lot of Doncaster fans seem quite unhappy, let's say, about the appointment of him into that role on the basis of, as you say, lack of experience. I don't know whether it's going to be to the levels of Southend, but I do think that they're going to struggle if things don't change next year. I don't see them having a super positive season in League Two unless things are dramatically different to what they've been this season. Because for me, from quite early on this season, it's been a fairly, the writing's been on the wall with Doncaster and relegation. It's almost been like a hand in hand for a lot of the season. But I do feel very sorry for the fans, and I can completely sympathise with the sadness of being in the places below that 20th spot. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one next year, but hopefully they can pull something out of the bag.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty to me. I think about all four sides relegated from League One at the moment, entering a League Two, which has a decent level of quality at the top, and we'll have to see what happens if they can bounce back. And the other team relegated, of course, Chris, was AFC Wimbledon, who were at home to Accrington, were 3-0 down at half-time to a trio of Accrington goals, pulled it back to 3-2, went 4-2 behind to O'Sullivan. Jack Radoni got a brace through AFC Wimbledon. This is a squad that's full of young, talented players that you wonder are going to be around. But what's killed them is this winless run. They've ended the season 27 league games without a win, 28 in all competitions if you include their cup defeat to Bournemouth as well. The last win, ironically, was against Accrington back in December. And having shipped leads on so many different occasions, we even talk about the one last week, the horrific moment where they dropped 3 win away at Fleetwood. There's just no one they can blame but themselves here.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, to score 3 goals and not come away with a win, you're usually asking a few questions, and having been 3-0 down in the first half, it's just horrible, isn't it? I didn't expect them to pull a miracle out yesterday, and they didn't. They put on a good performance, but as always, they can't defend and they can't hold on when they start to do things well, and they've consistently made life difficult for themselves this season.
Is there an issue maybe with the lack of leadership within that side? Because there's a lot of young, exciting players. You remember, go back to the start of the season, I loved AFC Wimbledon under Mark Robinson. They were fantastic, flirting around with those top spots. Yes, it was very early in the campaign, but you felt quite positive about what maybe they could do this year. And it's just completely nosedived.
Yeah, I think it is a lack of leadership. I mean, there's some good players there that I'd certainly be looking to keep. I mean, I don't know the exact situation at Wimbledon, but I know they've recently built the stadium, so perhaps some of the budget was redirected to that, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. And hopefully with some smart recruitment in the summer, they'll be looking at the top end of League Two. But yeah, they do need to sort out that leadership issue.
David, at this stage, I kind of feel like maybe out of the 4, Wimbledon might be best placed to return. I don't know if you have any feelings around that.
As of right now,
out of Gillingham, Doncaster, Wimbledon, and Crewe.
Yeah, I would probably say that's pretty accurate. As of right now, if we're just looking at end of this season, we're not including. Obviously, we can't include anything in the future because we don't know what's going to happen yet. But I think on face value right now, I would be inclined to agree. They've got a very young, exciting squad, but I think I agree and echo both your sentiments that they need a bit more leadership, and that's probably something that they need to be focusing on in the summer. But then I suppose they also need to be looking at retention of a lot of those young players who have looked very positive and could very well be finding themselves playing in League One next year. So I think for Wimbledon, it's very much going to depend on not only if they can bring a couple in, but how much they can actually retain what they've got.
I would very much be expecting players like Ayuba Sal and Jack Radoni to be in other clubs. They've been sensational. I think Radoni in particular is going to move on. I've seen that confirmed.
Radoni's easily one player at least.
At least. They've been sensational. They're both going to be very highly touted. A lot of interest certainly for them in the summer. And that's AFC Wimbledon's relegation confirmed. The final team that has secured safety on goal difference, having lost away at Bolton Wanderers, is Fleetwood Town. And Fleetwood Town had a rather eventful game with Bolton. They were initially ahead through a great Barry Bagley goal. Found themselves 2-1 by Declan John, got equalised through James Garner. The third Bolton goal from Dion Charles is crazy. It's essentially a slide tackle from 45 yards out that goes in.
It was mad, wasn't it?
I can't understand how it's happened.
How does that happen?
And it has to happen against Fleetwood, doesn't it? Because they have to have the barring moments this season. It has to be Fleetwood that see it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's the most baffling goal, isn't it? And keepers off his line, fair enough, but
you don't when score with slide tackles. Come on.
Sure, that's what
the goalkeeper shouldn't have to be worried about that.
You shouldn't have to at all. It's crazy.
Exactly. Like when you're going for a slide tackle, the last thing on your mind is, oh yeah, this ball's going in the back of that net. Unless you're like a yard in front.
John Danny Von Larsen sealing it as well. He's been an excellent form. Bolton have ended the season with 4 wins in a row and 8-game unbeaten run. Very good for them. Excited for them next year. Fleetwood have ended the season winless in 7. They've had 1 win, which was against Crewe Alexandra, since mid-January. They've ended the season on 40 points, boys. That is the lowest total needed for third-tier survival since 3 points for a win was introduced back in 1981.
They have been terrible, and they are very fortunate that 4 clubs have been worse than them, to be honest.
Well, I think it's an example of the gap. You go up to the top end as well, and we mentioned Plymouth Argyle earlier. They've ended up on 80 points, and the last team to get 80 points and not make the playoffs in the third tier was Tranmere back in 2003. There's a big gap at the minute, you have to say, in League One, certainly this season, between those top sides and those ones down the bottom, and it's evident.
It's a massive gulf, though, isn't it? Because you've just got to look at the size of the clubs at the top and the size at the bottom, and the reason why the points gap is so big is because the gulf in quality is massive.
There's so much money now at the top, and that's not a dig. The teams all get big attendances and thoroughly deserve the money they have. But there is such a financial gap now between the top half and bottom half.
Well, you assess the middle as well, and I'll go through the full table, but there's a 9-point gap between 11th place Ipswich and 12th place Accrington.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's a bit of the cut-off point, isn't it? You've got those 11 sides up higher, and then a bit below, and then the relegation teams as well.
Just illustrates it, though, doesn't it? Like, it's just, there is so, like, don't get me wrong, I love the fact that there's a lot of quality in this league, and I've loved being able to see lots of these different teams, but you can just see, even from just seeing them on the pitch, how these bigger clubs, their finances are not all the time, but a lot of the time are directly linked to what goes on the pitch, and it's really, I don't know, I'm just finding it crazy that, this for me is probably the biggest illustration and probably the biggest gap we've had in any league in England, certainly for as long as I can remember, where the top half and the bottom half are so far split apart in terms of gulf of quality difference and size of club.
Well, I have to say, certainly outside the Premier League, with your bog standard, the Big Six as it's called, and the teams below the lower 14, I think is the term some people use, but certainly League One has felt a bit of a gulf in quality at the moment this year, and I'm beginning to wonder if it might be a bit of a closed circuit. We'll see what happens with those teams that come down, particularly Barnes and Peterborough, worth keeping an eye on as well. one other notable thing to talk about was what happened following Lincoln City's 2-1 win over Crewe Alexandra. Michael Appleton has departed Lincoln City, boys. He's come to an end. His time at Lincoln's come to an end after nearly 3 full seasons with the club, nearly 150 games. It's been a great 3 years for them, you have to say. Well, certainly at least the first 2. Last season was exemplary. They came within 90 minutes of Championship football with that painful playoff final defeat. This season have been a lot more forgetful, certainly, but they have kept themselves away from trouble. I was surprised to see this.
I was surprised, but also I think it probably makes sense. I don't think there's any hard feelings there. He's just sort of done as much with them as he can do. And I think having a bit of fresh blood, taking a new look at Lincoln will be good for them.
David, do you think this might... Well, I can hear the dog. The dog does approve of your comments.
He does not agree with me.
He doesn't sound very... David, do you think this could be a case for both sides? Because I think you have to say Michael Appleton is an attractive manager to whatever club picks him up next. And I think Lincoln City is a potentially attractive job as well for the next one on the hot seat, given what that club could potentially do.
Yeah, I mean, I think both are really positive, but I think that it was always going to be a tall order this season, and I think maybe the reason why it's sort of come about now is on the basis of, you know, as we've just alluded to, last year's playoff push, and we have found that when teams fail at times to make those playoff places, it can, you know, in some cases, we certainly see it more in the Championship, that when you're vying for sort of those playoff places and then don't quite hit the mark, as they did ever so slightly, it can sort of topple you and go the opposite way the next season. So maybe it was sort of like everything riding on last season, and this season was sort of like the last chance saloon, if you will, in terms of how the Lincoln City board felt that they could be pushing again for those playoff places. But I would absolutely agree. Michael Appleton is a very good manager. And I think, you know, Lincoln City as a club is a very attractive prospect. You just have to look at what they've been able to achieve over the last couple of years. Granted, a lot of that is to do with Appleton, but I think if they get the right manager in and they maintain the philosophy that they've had, and look back to their successes of last season, I'm sure we'll be seeing them mid to high table next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite keen to see what happens with them, certainly. 2 other results to mention in League One. Ipswich Town got an excellent 4-0 win over Charlton to end their season. A brace for Wes Burns, who made the League One team this season. He's been superb in a wing-back role. James Norwood sealing the win right at the end with a goal. There's news that he's going to move on from Ipswich Town in this summer, move on to another club. I'm very curious to see who picks him up, because I think there's an excellent goal scorer in there if you make good use of him. There's a lot of goals. You remember how impressive was the Forest Green as well. There could be something really good out of him. I'm really excited to see where he goes. And the other mention is the game at Cambridge, a 2-2 draw between Cambridge United and Cheltenham Town. These guys were second and third, respectively, in League Two last year. They've ended up 14th and 15th in the table. Magnificent seasons from them, boys, under Michael Doth and Mark Bonner. Braces in the game for Sam Smith and Alfie May. That Sam Smith brings them up to 15 in the league. He's had 21 goals in all competitions. A brace for Alfie May moves him up to 23 league goals. He's had 26 in all competitions. 15th place, as far as I'm aware, is the highest Football League finish ever for Cheltenham Town. Magnificent performance from them. Slight issue with the Will Boyle red card at the end. A bit of a shame to see his time end there. He's apparently moving on to pastures new. Michael Doth is concerned. But Cambridge and Cheltenham, boys, fantastic seasons. You can't say any more than that, really.
Yeah, I think they'll be very happy with that. Nice and content. It's what you want from them. Just have a solid League One season and work from there. Exactly what we were talking about with Morecambe trying to achieve. And it's a good place to build from, I think. Yeah,
I think Cambridge United have asked them to bake quite a big humble pie, because there's quite a lot of us that need a slice of that after where a lot of us had them predicted at the start of the season, let's say. Yes, I don't think there were many, if any, who actually fancied them to stay out of the relegation zone, but they've done magnificently under Mark Bonner, and I'm quite excited about them next year, I can't lie. And we'll see what happens with that, certainly. Let's run through the League One table fully for one final time this season. Wigan Athletic champions, 92 points. Rotherham United promoted in second with 90 points. Milton Keynes Dons third with 89 points. Sheffield Wednesday with 85. They will play Sunderland in the playoffs, who had 84 points. MK Dons will play Wycombe Wanderers with 83 points. Plymouth Argyle miss out on the playoffs with 80. A really high tally to miss out on the playoffs on, you have to say. Oxford United in 8th with 76. Bolton in 9th with 73. Portsmouth in 10th with 73. Ipswich Town 11th with 70. Then a bit of a gap, as we've mentioned. Accrington Stanley, brilliant to get in the top half finish for them. 61 points from 46 games. Charlton Athletic 13th with 59. Cambridge United, fantastic finish, 14th with 58 points. Cheltenham 15th with 56. Burton Albion finished 16th with 53. Lincoln City gets 17th with 52. Shrewsbury Town finish in 18th with 50 points. Morecambe survive, fantastic for them, 42 points in 19th place. Fleetwood survive with 40 points, a really, really low tally in 20th. Gillingham relegated, unfortunately, on goal difference, 40 points from and 23rd place finish. Doncaster finished 22nd on 38. AC Wimbledon 23rd on 37. And Crewe Alexandra, bottom of the league, 29 points and 24th place. Let's drop down and we'll take a look at the world's best fourth tier.
League 2.
League 2, we had 10 games, 20 teams in action. The other 4 teams left to play, Salford City, Mansfield Town, Port Vale and Newport County, are all in action on Monday in 2 very important games. And the reason they're important games, boys, is because of what happened at Sixfields between Northampton and Exeter City. The Cobblers went into this game really needing 3 points really to help them in that pursuit of that third automatic spot, the only one that was left available. Got a 1-1 draw with Exeter in the end, initially ahead through a great Mitch Pinnett goal. An equaliser from Sam Nombe came seconds after Jack Soby was disallowed a goal to put Northampton 2 goals ahead. And it means Northampton are having to look over their shoulders at the minute heading into this final day. As I mentioned, Mansfield and Port Vale both play on Monday. If they both win, they'll both go above Northampton with 1 game left. This pursuit of the third automatic spot, David, is fantastic.
Mental. It's
Good word.
absolutely
I like that word. I'm using
mental.
that.
Like, it's just so crazy. When you think that still 7th place can still get an automatic spot. It's just...
Bristol Rovers can still get an automatic spot.
I just don't know what to say about this season.
Yeah, Bristol Rovers
honestly.
we'll get to in a minute because I lost my mind with Bristol Rovers yesterday.
It's just crazy, isn't it? Like, just...
Joey Barton is a football genius.
Oh,
I did not ever hear you say that, Chris.
There, I've said it.
Wow.
We've got to give a mention, boys, to Exeter, who have had an amazing week. They played Barrow at St James Park on Tuesday night, knowing a win was going to secure the promotion for them. They initially went behind. They turned it around 1-2-1. The winner, rather thickly, I think, coming from their captain, Matt Jay, who's been superb in an attacking midfield role for the last couple of seasons. Exeter, Chris, what a team. A lot of homegrown talent. Conveyor belt down there on the south coast. You've always dealt with Devon, so much Brighton talent. People feel like Archie Collins, Matt Jay, as you mentioned, Josh Kay, Jack Sparks, Chekti Barty's appeared in defence as well and been really impressive. Under Matt Taylor, they have been sensational this year, and it's a fully deserved promotion for them.
Yeah, the first game I watched when I got back was Oldham versus Exeter, and they blew me away. They were a really good team. I actually thought we played one of the better games we played this season, or at least what I've been told from others, and we lost, and we deservedly lost. They were such an impressive side, and they thoroughly deserve this promotion. And what a good advertisement for fan ownership.
Yeah, magnificent for fan ownership as well. A really good testament to them. So much to be impressed about, David. I think I mentioned last week Timothy Dieng, someone who... The dog does not like Timothy Dieng.
I have no idea what is going on with them down there. I think they're just fighting with each other. I'll go and check on them.
But yeah, David, as I said, I think I mentioned Timothy Dieng last week, someone who'd been relegated in back-to-back seasons with Southend, playing in really the spine of that Blues team, made the move to Exeter, been a monster in midfield to them. I think he has 15 goal involvements over the whole season. He's been superb for them. And that draw for Exeter yesterday at Northampton, coupled with Forest Green Rovers' defeat away at home to Harrogate Town, Exeter are now in prime position for the title. They're a point clear. If they go and beat Port Vale on the final day, they're league champions.
Mental, isn't it? again, this whole league.
Should we just use mental to describe everything in this league?
I feel like that's the only way to describe this league this season. Like, everything has just been so crazy. Like, yeah, I mean, you've just got to look back on the fact that, to describe how mental this is, Ed. Like, think about how much everybody thought Forest Green. Look how far ahead they were. Like, look how good they were doing. And then Exeter have just come out of nowhere. Well, like, not out of nowhere, but they've definitely pushed hard. Like, they fully deserve to be in the position they're in. And promotion was massive in itself. But then to do it then to potentially be doing it on the final day as champions against another playoff, like against a playoff contender,
well, it could be a promotion side depending on what happens on Monday. Certainly for Vale.
Well, that's really true. And that might make the game even more interesting, I suppose. But yeah, I think they've done great, and I think Chris was right in the sense that this is a really good model for kind of showing how you can be successful, but not necessarily have a sultan at the head of your club. You don't have to have a one person with all of this money. You can have a fan-owned model and be successful, which, not just Exeter City, but actually, despite their relegation, I suppose Wimbledon would be a great example of that too. But Exeter, they've had a fantastic season this year, and they're fully deserving where they are coming in the final day.
Yeah, magnificent. And with Plymouth Argyle missing out on playoffs, we're going to get the Devon Derby next year, which I'm personally quite excited about because it's been a long time coming. We didn't get one in the back end of 1920 because the pandemic brought football to an end. So
1920. Oh, the 1920 season.
No, not as. Yes. Do you remember the pandemic back in 1920? I was around for it. I don't know if you were or not. But yeah. So that 4-0 Exeter win is still the most recent result between those two, unbelievably, as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing that next year. Chris, Forest Green, I can't really wrap my head around this. They were so dominant in the first half this year, on the verge of breaking records, ran themselves clear. They've been top of the table since mid-September. It's the first time since then that they're no longer top of the table following that rather bizarre defeat to Harrogate. I think Harrogate had not been in good form at all, but the quality of Jack Diamond really shining through to give them the win, as well as a goal from Lloyd Carey too. I can't really work out what's happened with Forest Green. Yes, they've lost Matty Stevens, who was having an excellent season for them, but there's still so much quality within this side. Ultimately, they've won promotion, which is the main target for them, but it's a bit of a disappointment, you have to tell from a Forest Green perspective, that they've kind of fallen away from that title-winning form at a key moment, really.
It's a bit bonkers, isn't it? I mean, looking back a few weeks in that 4-0 loss to Barrow, and then I watched them on iFollow playing Oldham, and all right, they won that match, but they didn't look great. I don't know really where it's gone wrong for them. They will be bitterly disappointed to not yet have secured the title. With the form they were in early in the season, they should have run away with it, and they're now in a position where you'd say they're at least second. Well, they're second favourite.
They'll have to go to they've got to go to Mansfield on the final day. It's quite interesting actually that we've got, well, certainly in terms of the title race, we've got Exeter and Forest Green both up against sides that, depending on what happens on Monday, could well be in prime position to compete for promotion. So there's a lot on the line, certainly, with those two games heading into the final day. But yeah, a bit strange that Forest Green have fallen away to a point. They did have a big advantage, dropped the second. Ultimately, as I say, though, they're getting promotion, and that was the main target at the start of the season, so you can't really complain too much.
It's depressing to think that if we get to the FA Cup first round, we could have a massive giant killing of Forest Green.
Oh, we got to be careful using the term giant killing. I'm not a fan. People know my thoughts on that. Using giant killing to describe league status rather than actual size of club. Let's not go further on that. Let's talk Bristol Rovers. Wow. This was a bonkers moment down at Spotland. Bristol Rovers were 3-1 down at Rochdale. They were 2-0 down inside 70 minutes. It was 3-1 after an hour. Now, I rather foolishly put out a tweet saying, does anyone want to tell Bristol Rovers that automatics are on the line? And, of course, after doing that, they go and not only bring the game back level, but win it in the 95th minute and get a red card in the 98th minute. Now, I'm not saying I'm responsible for this, but if I can claim responsibility for this, I will greatly help Bristol Rovers in their pursuit of automatic promotion.
You cannot do that. You cannot.
I feel so silly after doing that, honestly. I really wish I could just eliminate that from history.
It's James's classic saying, isn't it? Don't tweet before.
No, that's the thing. That was
over.
my saying, and now I've done it myself. I'm such a hypocrite. I'm never ever doing that again. But what a comeback to Bristol Rovers, David! Unbelievable.
Just wow. Yeah, wow. Do you know what, Ed? I blame you for this. This is your fault. This is your fault. But like, to be fair though, are we really that surprised that a Rochdale game has got a scoreline of this sort of caliber? Like, are we really that surprised that we're looking at a Rochdale game that has more than 6 goals in it? To be honest,
was a common theme last season. Yeah,
I feel like they're just sort of continuing their run from last year, aren't they? Really?
Apparently, a hat trick for Aaron Collins, Chris. I believe he's claiming that he's got a touch on that final head. I believe it was a header from Elliot Anderson right at the end, and he's claimed he's basically taken off them on the line. Bristol Rovers go into the final day. They've still got to wait to see what happens with Port Vale and Mansfield, but if neither Port Vale or Mansfield win, they're going to be level on points with third place Northampton with 1 game to go, and it's Scunthorpe United.
Scunthorpe are going to pull out the performance of the season for that, aren't they?
Do you want that, or do you think that?
No, I think. No, I don't know. You always get it at the end of the season. One of the crap teams being Scunthorpe and Oldham pulling out a masterclass out of nowhere.
Well, I have to say it is at the Mem, and for Bristol Rovers now, there's a real sense that they could take the All Max spot. But
it's going to be bouncing.
It is going to be bouncing. It's going to be a great occasion to be there. But I'm still, annoyingly, with 1 game left to go, we're still having to talk about games in hand because of those 2 on Monday with Port Vale and Mansfield. And they are both really important games.
Is it for TV that they're playing?
They are both on TV, yes. Yeah. It's Salford v Mansfield. Salford still need a win to have a slight chance to promote a playoff spot anyway. Mansfield needed to go up to 3rd. And even if they get up to 3rd, they could be there for about 90 minutes, depending on what happens with Port Vale against Newport. There's still so much to play. I'd love to be able to sit. I can't look here now and say there's no games in hand. It's really annoying. And with 1 game left, I'm still having to wait to say that.
2 games left.
It's frustrating. Really frustrating. But we'll see how it goes with them. All eyes on Monday, as I mentioned. In terms of the playoff race, it was a very good weekend for Swindon Town, who got a win over Barrow. They were initially ahead with Josh Davison, brought back level for a Matt Platt header, but very quickly restored their lead with Louis Reed. A game where Harry McCurdy didn't actually get involved in the goal scoring, which is a bit unusual, but it showcased the quality that Swindon have. I think Louis Reed is one of those who's actually a cut above the level. He's been fantastic for Swindon throughout the whole season in a deeper midfield role. A lot of quality within that Swindon side, and they benefited, David, from Sutton United getting beaten at home to Bradford City. It's Sutton's first home defeat since the 30th of October, and it was a brilliant Bradford win.
It's mental. 30th of October, did you say?
30th of October, I believe it's 19 games.
What?
At Gander Green Lane without defeat. And Bradford have gone there. Bradford side, they've been largely inconsistent, you have to say. They've been better away, probably, you'd have to say, than at home. And they destroyed them, and Charles Vernon was sensational.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? Like, just that sort of record, and then this league is amazing, isn't it? Like, just to come from out of nowhere, like when you're a team that has nothing to play for apart from pride at this point in position, like, and you do that to a Sutton team who could still make those playoff places, but do you know what? I'm a bit speechless at that. I won't lie to you. I don't really know what to say. It's just.
It must be incredible if you don't know what to say.
It's crazy.
We've left Dave speechless.
We have left Dave speechless. That's what you've done, Bradford. Well done to you. That does not happen often. Quality really shining through with Bradford there. Sutton, it's a dent in Sutton's playoff aspirations. They've got to host Harrogate on the far day. Swindon Town go to Walsall.
It's still mad to be discussing Sutton as a playoff side.
Well, they've had a fantastic season.
They have. Incredible. They totally deserve it. It's great to see. It's just, I don't think anyone really saw this coming.
No one saw this coming. Tell them they're going to be in a playoff push and even a promotion push for a lot of season and go to Wembley for the EFL Trophy final. Someone needs to tell the people at Sutton that the EFL is not this easy, because I'm worried they're going to get carried away. It's not meant to be this simple as a Football League side, but it's just been sensational for them this year.
It's what I've been saying all season, and it's what frustrates me so much at Oldham's situation, is to be successful in League Two. You need to not be a basket case off the field, and you need to get the basics right reasonably consistently. You don't need to have really great players. You just have to have solid players that are organised. And I think Sutton exemplify that.
Yeah, Sutton having a fantastic season. They're still in the playoff hunt, and the other team's still in the playoff hunt are Tranmere Rovers. Chris, you were there at Prenton Park. A 2-0 win for Tranmere. Goals from Josh Hawkes and Kane Hemmings. Hemmings has had a monumental impact on the team since signing from Burton. He's really showcasing his qualities, part of the front line with Elliot Nevitt. Tranmere have got to beat Leyton Orient on the final day to have a chance. Did you get a sense watching them that they could be a playoff side?
They didn't blow me away. They were comfortable 2-0 winners, but not particularly because I thought they were excellent, but more that we weren't, as has been the case many times this season. But I just think they've not quite got the quality to push it. I think there are better sides above them.
Salford, the other team, still potentially in the playoff mix. They've got to beat Mansfield on Monday and then go into that final day potentially with the chance to take a playoff spot as well. We'll have to see. Some of the other results to talk about in League Two involving sides that seasons are done, because the focus now pretty much is all on the top of that table. Colchester United got a 2-2 draw with Walsall, a brace to Freddie Sears, scoring the first and last goals in the game. Walsall turned the game on its head with Brendan King and George Miller, but Sears has rescued a point for them. Carlisle United got a win over Stevenage. Their last two wins have both been at home. Joe Riley and Luis Alessandro putting Carlisle 2 up, and Luke Norris penalty getting one back to Stevenage. Carlisle have confirmed a 3-year deal for Paul Simpson, which is brilliant, and he needs to be backed, because if he can, this could be very good times there to Carlisle United, you have to say. I kind of joked at the time that when the 3-year deal comes to an end, Carlisle United will have just been promoted to the Premier League. Because they just go, I think to recall they went back to back, didn't they, under Paul Simpson a few years back now, coming out of non-league and straight up into League One as well. Hopefully good times ahead to Carlisle United. Leyton Orient won 2-0 away at Crawley Town. Lawrence Vigouroux assisting Theo Archibald with the first goal with a great pass over the top. A missed Aaron Driner penalty. Crawley were denied an equaliser from James Tilley that replay showed quite clearly went over the line. Not a great moment for the officiating, certainly in that game. There's a lot of footage going around of the ball very clearly coming off the bar and over the line and back out again. So to see that goal not be given for them, and Aaron Drine ended up seeing the Leyton Orient win right at the end. And Scunthorpe United got a 1-1 draw with Hartlepool United. A great moment for young Cameron Wilson getting his first senior EFL goal, intercepting a pass and doing really well to almost carry the ball himself up to the edge of the box and score himself. Hartlepool getting an equaliser though for a Nicky Featherstone penalty. I mentioned, I think a few weeks back, that there were nuns in the away end at Scunthorpe. This time I noticed a lot of Hartlepool fans were dressed as surgeons. I just noticed these things. So you could see when Featherstone was having the penalty, there were a lot of guys lined up right along the edge of the pitch in what I believe were surgeon costumes. So, final away day, go and enjoy the fancy dress. Why not?
Is this Hartlepool?
This is Hartlepool, yes.
They've always been fantastic for that. I seem to remember them playing. It was a London away game a good few years back, and there's a fantastic picture if you Google it of a bunch of fans on the London Underground all dressed as Smurfs. I'll dig the picture out later. It was superb.
I think all the North East clubs, there's other regions of the country as well that great support, but I found all the North East clubs, whether that's Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough, Hartlepool, even some of the ones in non-league as well. I think South Shields down low league, non-league, are doing pretty well as well. They always seem to have great support, those North East clubs.
Yeah, and Hartlepool have always been fantastic at the fancy dress. They just seem to have a really good way of organising it. And much better than Oldham fans going dressed in black as mourners, basically, yesterday.
I think Scunthorpe brought a coffin as well, I've seen as well. They were carrying a coffin through the streets in the build-up to their game.
Yeah.
But
I think
they'll come to an end as well.
I think we'll have similar next week.
Yeah. Chris, I do want to ask you about Oldham just before we wrap it up. Difficult, certainly, to see. The news that John Sheridan has signed a new deal. What's your personal thoughts with that?
So I put a bit of a thread out on Twitter the other day. I think Oldham fans would have been very understanding if he'd have told the board to do one. He's been given the position of manager rather than head coach, as most of our posts have been in recent years, which I'm somewhat hopeful that means he might have some more say in the signings. But that's been the difficulty at Oldham for years, is that recruitment hasn't been in the hands of the manager or head coach or whatever you want to call them. I think it's a no loss. He'll have a good crack at it. He won't lose his status as legend at Oldham. And if the board start to interfere, he can probably quite comfortably say, stuff it and go and retire like he'd planned to before he came back to Oldham in January. I think he wouldn't have wanted to go out like this, so I think it's worth him having a stab at it. But it's just a very sad position to be in, to be honest.
It's difficult to feel quite positive about Oldham next season, isn't it? Because I think I remember saying as well they're going to stay with similar budget to what they have, plus the parachute payments. So when you're dropping into a division that's got such high finances as we're seeing now, and a bottleneck at the top that's going to restrict how many go up. I look at Southend this year, who had a really torrid start to the season and have thankfully been able to pick it up and get themselves out of serious trouble. I feel like Oldham and Scunthorpe might need to be wary of what's happened to Southend this year.
I think Stockport's the parallel for me with Oldham is we have serious managerial issues, not enough money. I mean, the squad we've developed on the budget this season would struggle in the National League. And we're going into it with a sporting director who hasn't actually left his role at the moment, that struggles to recruit in the Football League. It's a different ball game at that level because you're also trying to have a bit of savviness about convincing semi-professional footballers to become professional. And if we are not careful, if John Sheridan isn't allowed to recruit his own players, we're in a horrible situation next year, especially with a small budget. You have to be very, very savvy at that level with a good budget, never mind a tight budget. And I think it will be challenging.
Yeah, I worry about Oldham next year. I think you have to at this stage with the way that club is run, as you say. And
there's talks of administration again, so there's I don't know how the points deductions work in the National League, but I think it's still a 12-point deduction for that.
I believe Dover had a 12-point deduction this year for that, yes.
Yes, so, I mean, I actually think administration would probably be a blessing in disguise for Oldham in terms of the ownership structure, but it makes survival in that league more difficult.
I'd just like to see Oldham have a good season again, because I can't think of if I've ever seen it, really. There were years, weren't they, where they were a League One outfit, but probably a lower end League One outfit. Yeah, and in the last 4 years under Abdullah, it's just nosedived.
Our last playoff appearance, I think, was 2007. Our last top half performance, I think you're talking 10 years ago. I mean, we put the blame on Abdullah and he deserves every bit of blame he gets. But actually the club has been at best stagnating, at worst declining for nigh on 30 years since we left the Premier League, really. We were in the Premier League at the wrong time. We were in it at its forming time. And so when people go on about us as being the first former Premier League side to drop out the Football League, well, yes, we are. But we didn't really have the financial benefits of those 2 seasons there because it wasn't as rich as it is now. And then we were relegated, having spent probably a little bit too much money up there and not having good, relegation clauses in contracts. So we were paying big wages, and that culminated in administration in 2004, and we've been stuck in League One since we dropped in '97.
Difficult times for Oldham. I'd love to see things change, but you just have to hope for the best for the future, really. We'll have to see how that goes.
They are talking to potential buyers, apparently, according to TalkSport the other day.
Yeah, let's hope there's some progress with that. Rounding off with the League 2 table, Exeter City lead the way at the moment with 1 game to go, 84 points from 45 games. Forest Green Rovers, who've been top for so long, have dropped down to second. They're on 83 points from 45. It's a shootout between those two on the final day for the league title. And the shootout for that third automatic spot is, as David has been saying, mental. Northampton in third, 77 points from 45. Bristol Rovers in fourth after that amazing comeback, 77 from 45. Port Vale playing Monday, they're on 75 from 44, can go above both of them. Mansfield can also go above both of them, they're on 75 from 44 as well. Swindon Town wrap up, the playoff place is currently 74 from 45. They've got Sutton a point behind on 73. Tranmere a point behind them on 72. Salford City needing 2 wins from 2 wins in the last 2 games to have a chance, they're on 69 from 44. And down the bottom, as we mentioned already, Scunthorpe United relegated on 26 points from 45, and Oldham Athletic, the other relegated side, 37 points from 45. Stevenage and Barrow secured survival over the last couple of weeks, both on 44 points from 45 games. David, Chris, thanks very much for this. This has been a really enjoyable episode, and the season's almost done. It's quite sad to say, actually.
I'm glad to see it end.
Okay, maybe from a personal perspective it is, but the season as a whole, they've been two fantastic divisions, you have to say.
Oh, they always are, especially League One. I think it's a fantastic league, League One. Such quality, such excitement, but then also this season, the top sort of promotion run in the League Two has been fantastic as well. It is really a fantastic system we have in the UK, and we really need to protect it, having now 5 professional leagues. It's superb.
Yeah, absolutely. A brilliant pair of divisions. David, I do really appreciate you being here today after the difficulties of yesterday.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I won't lie. I was crying at full time. It was an emotional day yesterday, but yeah, pleasure as always, boys, and yeah, wouldn't miss it. It's always a chance to speak on all of the teams, and the league table doesn't lie.
We really do appreciate having you on board, David. It's been a lot of fun having you involved in this season. We are going to have a League One playoffs preview that we're going to put together. I am aiming to have that out for you on this coming Tuesday. The playoffs begin on Thursday. It's a very quick turnaround, beginning with the tie between Wycombe Wanderers and Milton Keynes Dons on Thursday night at Adams Park. I'm really looking forward to diving into the preview for this, because this is 2 sets of excellent ties, and I've got a number of very good guests on as well to provide a lot of insight on the 4 teams. So until then, goodbye.